Hey, what up YouTube? Today on my RC channel, I'm bringing you the scale build, Return of Box2Beast, the sequel to my RC 4-wheel drive Trailfinder 2 scale build. We're going to be installing the RC 4-wheel drive inner fender wells. I'm going to be putting some LEDs in, a fresh grille with the round headlights from a Marlin, the Holmes Hobby SHV 500 V3 servo that has 450 ounce-inch of torque when connected directly to a 3S battery. Now this Holmes Hobby servo is going to be going in place of my Ecotech WP120T servo, which had a plastic housing. This one has a full billet housing, metal gears, metal splines, and is super awesome because it connects directly to the battery. I'm also going to be installing the RC 4-wheel drive winch controller in my Trailfinder 2. So let's get this party started. Start by removing the body, and I put set screws in instead of headed screws so that it's easy to remove. Here you can see the difference between this 3S battery, which is quite small, and we'll be replacing my 2S batteries just to give me a little bit more torque, removing the magnetic bench. Here I'm removing interior that I made for this truck to make it super detailed, stripping out the electronics and just kind of getting everything out of the way. So in between this video and the last video, I installed some brass wheel weights called beef tubes, which were super awesome. I've removed the medium lead springs out of the front setup and did what's called the O-ring mod just to test it out, and you'll see that performance advantages in the running portion of this video. Another mod that I did off of camera is I switched the steering linkage from straight rod ends to bent rod ends from axial, and I had to change out the stock 60mm rod to a 55mm rod in order to keep everything centered and keep my servo horn at 90 degrees. This is the old EcoPower servo that I took out. This is the new Holmes Hobby servo. It's a beautiful unit, and I'm very happy to be installing this. Getting everything hooked up so that I can center the steering before I install this servo, and kind of give everything a test to make sure it's all wired up correctly and doesn't just go up in smoke the first time I turn this thing on. Now I did install this using the rubber insulators that came with the servo and the crush sleeves, which did necessitate using screws that were slightly longer than the stock screws from the kit. Don't forget to use Loctite on everything to keep it from falling apart out on the trail. This Holmes Hobby unit is a standard size servo and will fit right into place, and you don't even have to shave down a gusset to make it fit in the frame rails. In this truck, I installed the ESC directly on top of the servo using 3M VHB double-sided sticky tape. After getting this servo and ESC reinstalled on the truck, it's time to give this wiring a good cut job and kind of get it out of the way so that I can reassemble it and start installing the front wheel wells. Now, because this Holmes Hobby servo connects directly to the battery, it does leave a little bit more wiring in your truck to tuck away, but it does give it tons more torque, and this thing is actually able to run up to a 4S, so you can connect it directly to a 14-volt battery, and when you do that, you get 520 ounce-inches of torque and a 60-degree movement at 0.08 milliseconds. Now, these wheel wells, they fit pretty well if you just follow the cut lines, but my truck required a little bit of trimming. I had to make a hole because I used a taller shock tower and longer shocks from the front than stock. I installed this winch controller from RC 4-wheel drive to the front of the servo just to keep it nice and tidy and hidden, and I like to keep all the weight as far forward as possible. Now with everything mocked up, I can see if all of the wiring is going to fit with the body and everything, so it's, guess what, time to pull all back apart again so that I can tidy up the wiring a little bit more and get everything prepped for paint. Paint prep for these fenders is really just smoothing out all of the scissor cut edges so that it looks nice from underneath, and then I did give it a little scrub down with some Scotch-Brite just to get that paint to stick a little bit more because it is going to be in the wheel well. I did mask off the headlight buckets and the turn signal buckets because I am going to be putting LEDs in this, and I do want those reflective surfaces behind it. Scotch-Brited everything and then laid down a couple of coats of this PS23 Tamiya gunmetal on those parts. I did tape them to a piece of cardboard to make them easy to handle and make it quick and easy to spray, all in one session. After force drying the paint with a blow dryer and giving it adequate time to harden up, it's time to install the headlight lenses and get this thing assembled and get it back. This chrome grille kit from RC4WD is pretty cool because it does have a molded radiator behind that grill, and it's open and through so you can actually see it through. And the front just presses into it and it's held on that way. But there are holes and bosses, so if you decide to install some screws, you can do that as well. Although this grill didn't fit quite as good as the original stock one, you can see that the fender peels away from it just slightly. It's not very noticeable, especially behind a nice off-road bumper. Now on this truck, I did decide to go ahead and build a scratch-built LED kit using the MyTrick RC SQ1 light controller, which gives it backup lights, brake lights, hazard lights, and headlights, and several different modes to operate those. I've also installed the Pitbull Box2Beast tires in the Alien compound on the stock wheels, which are a little bit wider and just a tiny bit taller, so it can get over the rocks a little bit easier, seeing that it's not a 4 axle. I also installed those with the provided foam. It's a dual stage foam that comes with these tires. So the reason that I took out the medium spring out of the front, and it's only the single red leaf spring, is because I noticed that the front wasn't really flexing that much over the box, so you can see how much flex this truck has now. Now the slightly taller Pitbull tires do rub a little bit on the rear fender. Inside, it's not that big of a deal, but I might trim that up just to give it a little bit more clearance. Now with the XVD axles in the front, there's enough steering that the tires do actually rub on the leaf springs, so I will probably be switching that over to a 3-link and coilovers in the front, because the spring side-to-side play also limited my steering geometry. Here you can see why I installed that inner fender well. Look how nice and neat that truck looks in a position like this, where it's real close to rolling over down this cliff. These tires are rock crawling tires, they're not mud tires. They did work pretty okay in this mud that we have in our drainage ditch here. The tread did tend to pack up though with the mud, which our mud is a mixture of sand and clay, and it did kind of build up on the tread pretty bad. But overall, I am very pleased with these Pitbull tires. Now the Holmes Hobby Servo, that thing's freaking amazing, giving it Mondo torque. You can wedge that thing in between rocks and manipulate the weight of your truck with the steering, which is pretty cool. It makes it a little easier to get unstuck when you're just really pinched into a spot. Although this servo is amazing, super high torque and fairly quick for its torque range, it's important to remember that this servo is not waterproof, and submerging it may damage it. So avoid deep water crossings. However, the SQ1 light controller from MyTrick RC is fully waterproof, and you can submerge that bad boy and run all of your LEDs. One feature of the SQ1 light controller that I did forget to mention, it also has a backfire light. So once I get an exhaust on this truck, I'll be able to put that backfire light LED in there, and it'll look pretty bitchy. Don't forget, if you like this video, to give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already subscribed, and hit that bell so you get notified when I drop the new videos, because I don't want you to miss any of that action. Here I am testing the climbing ability of these Pitbull tires on granite that is slightly dusted with sand. It was quite difficult to get up that. It actually took probably 10 tries with quite a few tumbles, but it made it. You can see it descends pretty well. The meat tubes kept it from flipping over forward. Now this area here is that same granite, but it's a little moist, and the tires were able to grip and get it up that area, which it was not capable of doing with the previous stock set of tires. Now, during this cross session, I did tumble the truck off of some pretty high stuff, 10 or 15, maybe 20 times, trying to get the best footage for you guys, but I did pop a shock, and that did put an end to my day after I realized that it had broken. But, all in all of the modifications I made to this truck today made it much more capable and much funner to drive. Alright guys, be good to each other out there, and stay safe.